And Donald Trump, as we know, has put, as the Prime Minister just said, unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living. He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed.
Canada has a new Prime Minister, and he's wasting no time making waves. Mark Carney has stepped into Justin Trudeau's shoes, and his first major move? A direct challenge to Donald Trump's tariffs. The trade war between the U.S. and Canada is back on, and Carney isn't backing down.
We didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for this fight. But Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
For years, Canada has relied on its economic relationship with the United States. But with Trump imposing new tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, Carney is taking a stand. His message to Washington? Canada won't be bullied. Retaliatory tariffs are staying in place, and Carney is redirecting the funds to support Canadian workers. This is a direct confrontation with Trump, and it's already sending shockwaves through the global economy. But will Carney's aggressive stance protect Canada's economy, or drag the country into an even bigger economic fight? And with an election looming, is he making the right political move? Or is he setting himself up for failure? Let's dive in. Mark Carney is not your typical politician. In fact, he's never been elected to public office before. So, how did he end up as Canada's Prime Minister? The answer lies in his extraordinary career in economics. Born in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, Carney built an impressive resume before stepping into politics. He studied at Harvard, earned his doctorate at Oxford, and spent over a decade at Goldman Sachs. But his real rise to prominence came when he took over as Governor of the Bank of Canada. He was the man who steered Canada's economy through the 2008 financial crisis, earning him international recognition. His leadership was so respected that the UK made him the first non-British governor of the Bank of England, where he helped navigate the financial fallout from Brexit. Mark Carney's background. Carney's transition into politics was sudden but calculated. With Justin Trudeau's popularity in decline and the Conservative Party surging in the polls, the Liberal Party needed a strong, respected leader to rally around. In a landslide vote, Carney won the leadership of the Liberal Party, with an overwhelming 85.9% support. Now, he faces the daunting task of leading Canada through economic uncertainty and a potential trade war with the United States. Trudeau's resignation came at a critical moment. Canada's economy was struggling with rising costs of living, housing shortages, and growing discontent among voters. The Conservatives were gaining momentum, and if an election were held today, polls suggested the Liberals could lose power. Carney's job is to turn that around, and he's making bold moves to prove that he can stand up for Canada's interests. His first major test? The escalating tariff battle with Donald Trump. The question now is whether Carney's financial expertise will translate into effective political leadership, or if his lack of electoral experience will cost him in the next election. The trade war with Trump. The battle lines have been drawn. Mark Carney, Canada's new Prime Minister, has made it clear he will not back down in the face of Donald Trump's trade war. With tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel back in place, Carney is fighting fire with fire. His stance is firm. Until the U.S. removes its tariffs and shows respect for fair trade, Canada's retaliatory tariffs will remain. But what led to this escalation, and how will it impact Canada's economy? The latest trade dispute began when Trump reimposed tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, claiming that Canada was flooding the U.S. market with cheap materials, undercutting American manufacturers. This isn't the first time Trump has targeted Canadian industries. Back in 2018, his administration slapped tariffs on Canadian metals, triggering a trade war that strained U.S.-Canada relations. At the time, Trudeau responded with countermeasures, but Carney's approach is even more aggressive. Carney has pledged that Canada's tariffs will stay in place, hitting U.S. industries hard. But he's not just using them as a bargaining chip. He's redirecting the revenue from these tariffs to directly support Canadian workers affected by Trump's trade policies. His plan? To ensure that Canada's manufacturing and steel sectors don't just survive, but come out stronger. It's a bold economic move, but it also carries risks. Trump, never one to back down from a fight, has already responded with heated rhetoric. He has suggested that Canada's economy is too weak to withstand a prolonged trade war, and has even made the outrageous claim that Canada would be better off as the 51st U.S. state. Carney's response was swift and unapologetic. He dismissed Trump's remarks as ridiculous and reaffirmed Canada's sovereignty. In a fiery speech, he compared the trade dispute to a hockey match, declaring that just like in the rink, Canada would emerge victorious. But beyond the political theatrics, the stakes are real. Canada's economy is heavily intertwined with the U.S. market, and while Carney's tariffs might hurt American industries, they could also cause collateral damage to Canadian businesses that rely on cross-border trade. The manufacturing sector is already feeling the pressure, and some industry leaders worry that prolonged tensions could push companies to shift operations elsewhere. If negotiations don't improve, Canadian exporters could face an uphill battle in maintaining access to U.S. markets. Meanwhile, the diplomatic fallout is becoming more pronounced. The Biden administration, while taking a different tone from Trump, has not rushed to intervene. The U.S. government is still prioritizing American manufacturing, and while officials in Washington acknowledge the importance of Canada as a trading partner, they aren't eager to roll back Trump's tariffs just yet. This puts Carney in a tough position. His leadership is being tested on the international stage, and how he handles this trade war could define his early tenure as Prime Minister. One thing is clear, Carney is staking his reputation on standing up to Trump's economic aggression. He believes that Canada cannot afford to be seen as weak, and that by taking a hard line now, the country can force the U.S. to reconsider its approach. But the question remains, will this strategy work? Or is Canada heading into a deeper economic battle that could have long-term consequences for both countries? The next few months will be crucial. If Carney can successfully navigate this dispute and secure a trade deal that benefits Canada, he'll solidify his position as a strong leader. But if tensions escalate further and the economic impact starts to weigh on Canadian workers, he could face significant backlash, just in time for an upcoming election. This trade war isn't just about tariffs, it's about power, sovereignty, and the future of Canada's economic relationship with the U.S. And with Trump continuing to provoke, Carney has made his decision. Canada will not fold. The only question now is whether this high-stakes gamble will pay off. Canada's economic strategy under Carney. Mark Carney knows that Canada can't afford to be dependent on the United States. If Trump's tariffs have made one thing clear, it's that relying too much on one trading partner, especially an unpredictable one, puts Canada's economy at risk. That's why Carney's strategy goes beyond just fighting back against U.S. tariffs. He's pushing for something much bigger, a transformation of Canada's trade relationships and economic policies to ensure long-term stability. At the heart of Carney's plan is trade diversification. For decades, the U.S. has been Canada's largest trading partner, accounting for more than 75% of its exports. But Carney wants to change that. His administration is ramping up negotiations with European and Asian markets, looking to secure new deals with what he calls reliable partners. He has pointed to the European Union, Japan, and emerging economies in South America as key targets for expansion. By spreading Canada's economic reliance across multiple regions, Carney believes the country can shield itself from future trade wars and political volatility coming from Washington. But Carney isn't just looking outward. He's also focusing on Canada's internal economy. One of the biggest obstacles to Canada's economic growth isn't just external trade barriers. It's the restrictions within its own borders. Provincial trade barriers have long made it difficult for businesses to operate seamlessly across the country. Carney has vowed to eliminate these roadblocks, making it easier for goods, services, and workers to move freely between provinces. His argument is simple. If Canada can't build a strong, united domestic economy, how can it compete on the global stage? By streamlining internal trade, he believes he can boost national productivity and reduce dependence on foreign markets. The impact of these policies could be huge, but they come with challenges. While many industries welcome the idea of trade diversification, shifting away from the U.S. isn't easy. American companies are deeply integrated into Canadian supply chains, and breaking those ties, especially without guaranteed alternatives, could create economic disruptions. Some business leaders warn that moving too aggressively away from the U.S. could backfire, leading to short-term economic pain before long-term gains are realized. Critics argue that Carney is underestimating how deeply intertwined the two economies are, and that trade diversification, while necessary, won't be an immediate solution. Carney's internal trade reforms also face hurdles. Provincial governments have resisted past efforts to remove internal trade barriers, fearing loss of control over their local economies. While Carney has the political capital to push through major changes, he'll need provincial cooperation to make it happen. If provinces push back, his vision of a unified Canadian market could face significant delays, limiting the effectiveness of his economic strategy. Beyond trade, Carney is also taking a hard look at Canada's long-term economic resilience. He has hinted at major investments in infrastructure, technology, and green energy, arguing that Canada must modernize its industries to stay competitive. He has also emphasized the need to support workers displaced by economic shifts, ensuring that job losses in one sector are offset by opportunities in others. His approach is clear. Economic security for Canada isn't just about retaliating against Trump's tariffs. It's about future-proofing the entire economy. The big question now is whether Carney's strategy will work. If he succeeds, Canada could emerge stronger, more independent, and less vulnerable to political shifts in the U.S. But if his plans falter, if trade diversification stalls, if internal reforms hit resistance, if economic pain from the trade war lingers, then Carney could face serious political consequences. His leadership is being tested not just on how he handles Trump's tariffs, but on whether he can truly reshape Canada's economic future. The stakes couldn't be higher. Carney has made it clear that Canada won't be a bystander in global trade. His policies are bold, his vision is ambitious, and his determination is undeniable. But the success of his strategy depends on execution and on whether Canada is ready to embrace a future where the U.S. isn't its only economic lifeline. Political challenges ahead. Mark Carney's leadership is about to face its biggest test yet. The trade war with Trump is just one of many battles he has to fight. On the home front, he's walking into a political minefield, and the clock is ticking. A federal election is looming, and the opposition is eager to bring him down. Carney may be an economic expert, but can he survive the brutal world of politics? The first major challenge is the upcoming federal election. By law, an election must take place before October, but Carney could call it earlier. The problem? The Conservative Party is currently leading in the polls. After nearly a decade of Liberal rule under Justin Trudeau, many Canadians are looking for change. While Carney's appointment as Liberal leader has given the party a boost, it may not be enough. If he can't win over voters quickly, he could become one of the shortest-serving prime ministers in Canadian history. Carney's lack of political experience is another major obstacle. He's never run for office before, never campaigned, and never had to deal with the messy realities of political infighting. His entire career has been built on making calculated economic decisions, not winning over the public. Now, he has to prove that he can connect with everyday Canadians, and not just with economists and bankers. The opposition is already attacking him as an elitist who doesn't understand the struggles of ordinary people. His challenge is clear. He must convince voters that he's not just a financial expert, but a leader who can deliver real solutions for Canada. Beyond the election, Carney also has to deal with a divided Liberal Party. His leadership victory was decisive, but that doesn't mean everyone is on board. Trudeau's resignation left a power vacuum, and not all Liberal MPs are happy with Carney's approach. Some party members worry that his aggressive stance against Trump could escalate tensions further, making life harder for Canadian businesses. Others believe he should focus more on domestic issues like healthcare, housing, and the cost of living. If Carney can't unify his own party, the Liberals could crumble before the next election even happens. And then there's Trump. The former U.S. president is already making Carney a target, calling him weak and accusing him of trying to destroy U.S. Canada relations. If Trump wins the next U.S. election, things could get even worse. A second Trump presidency would mean more tariffs, more economic pressure, and possibly even a full-scale trade war. Carney's strong stance has earned him praise from some Canadians, but it also puts the country at risk of deeper economic fallout. Will voters see him as a defender of Canada's interests, or as someone picking unnecessary fights with the U.S.? That question could decide his fate in the next election. One thing is certain, Carney's leadership will be tested like never before. He's stepping into the ring at a moment of extreme political and economic uncertainty. If he can navigate these challenges, he could reshape Canada's future. But if he stumbles, the consequences will be severe, not just for his political career, but for the entire country. The next few months will shape the future of Canada. Mark Carney has made bold moves, but what happens next? Will his strategy of standing up to Trump's tariffs pay off, or will it backfire? And what does this all mean for Canada's economy and its global position? If Carney's plan works, Canada could come out of this stronger. His push for trade diversification could reduce the country's dependence on the U.S., making the economy more resilient. By strengthening ties with Europe, Asia, and Latin America, Canada could build new opportunities that protect it from future American trade aggression. If internal trade barriers are lifted, businesses within Canada could benefit from a stronger domestic market. These changes could position Canada as a major player in the global economy, no longer at the mercy of U.S. policies. But if things go wrong, the consequences could be severe. A prolonged trade war with the U.S. could lead to job losses, higher costs for consumers, and economic uncertainty. If the U.S. retaliates with more tariffs or restrictions, Canadian businesses that rely on American trade could take a major hit. Farmers, manufacturers, and exporters would be left scrambling to find alternative markets. And if Carney fails to secure meaningful trade deals with other countries, Canada could end up weaker, not stronger. The political implications are just as important. If Carney is seen as too aggressive, he risks alienating not just voters, but international allies. The U.S. is still Canada's largest trading partner, and while Carney wants to reduce reliance on Washington, completely severing economic ties is impossible. If his strategy leads to more economic pain than progress, it could cost him the next election. The Conservative Party is already positioning itself as the pro-business alternative, arguing that Canada should be working with the U.S., not fighting against it. If voters start feeling the economic pinch, they may turn against Carney before he even has a chance to fully implement his vision. The wild card in all of this is the next U.S. election. If Trump returns to the White House, Canada could be in for a rough ride. Trump has already made it clear that he sees Canada as a secondary player in trade negotiations. If re-elected, he could impose even harsher restrictions, forcing Carney into an even tougher position. But if Joe Biden or another Democratic candidate wins, there's a chance for diplomacy. A less confrontational U.S. administration might be more willing to negotiate, giving Carney a path to resolving the trade tensions without further economic damage. So, where does Canada go from here? The next few months will tell us whether Carney's leadership is the beginning of a new economic era or the start of a major political downfall. If he can successfully navigate the trade war, secure new alliances, and win over voters, He could cement himself as one of Canada's most influential prime ministers. But if his policies falter and economic instability takes hold, his tenure could be short-lived. Carney has taken a bold gamble. Now, the question is, will it pay off? Mark Carney has made his move. He's standing firm against Trump, keeping tariffs in place, and pushing Canada toward a future less dependent on the United States. But will this strategy work? Or is he risking Canada's economic stability just as an election looms? His leadership will be tested in ways no prime minister has faced before, and the consequences will shape the nation's future. What do you think? Is Carney making the right call by taking a hard stance against Trump, or should he be looking for a compromise? Will his economic strategy strengthen Canada, or could this trade war cause more harm than good? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this deep dive insightful, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates on global politics and economics. And if you want to see how BRICS is challenging the US dollar, check out our latest analysis. Just click the video on the screen now.